So this video has been a long time in the making. This video is asking Gen Z students who they're voting for in 2024. There have been many attempts to make this video. All four of them failed. But finally we succeeded. We didn't have a big sample size because we showed up on a Saturday in April. So as you guys know, students were graduating and not too many people were there. However, I am thankful to the people who decided to participate and allow us to ask them questions. If you liked the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and also share. Thank you. So obviously the question is who you voting for in 2024. I know you said that you're not necessarily sure who you're voting for yet. Give us a rundown, explain, like, what's your thought process behind being a little bit more hesitant?
So, first off, let me say that I don't feel like a lot of people actually fully understand the presidential role.
Okay.
Because many times you see people say, oh, President such and such didn't do this or that for specific communities, and people don't realize, even though the president can give executive orders, at the end of the day, if he has a Congress and a House of Representatives that's basically the opposite party of what he is, or
Right.
in the future she may be, then you're going to have a hard time doing a lot of things. Like a lot of people were criticizing Obama for the lack of things that he did for the black community, but people don't realize Obama had to deal with a majority Republican party for a good portion of his tenure. So with that being said, I really don't know who I'm voting for president, because if you look at either side of the media, villainize both the current president and Donald Trump. And it's like, it's kind of hard to form your own opinion when there's so much biased media out here, because just how people don't feel like Donald Trump is the best president, he necessarily wasn't the worst president. It's just like that he said that he shouldn't have been saying. But there were some good things that he did. Just like with Joe Biden, I don't necessarily agree with everything Joe Biden has done, but there is some good that he has done within his tenure.
Okay, in values, which side do you think represents your values more? Like, if you had to just pick on terms of like, okay, who represents me best as a president? You said you were a libertarian, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so how's that playing? Like, is that playing any factor in who you're going to be voting for, or?
So, I would prefer someone who supports a smaller government. I feel like in a lot of ways that the government has tried to reach into like the economy and like helping people out. It's done a lot of harm. It's like it's just bailed out big businesses. It's not right. For this election, it's going to be difficult because like the libertarians don't even really have
Any representation?
any big candidate that's going under it. But I'm just really hoping for someone that isn't going to do much at all, really, this election. I'm not going to
In terms of like just state
Like-
interference in domestic issues?
Yeah.
Okay, so as it pertains, so like, is your issue, is it inflation? Is it like the economy? Is like, where is your line of like the government is going too far in terms of just like domestic interference? Where is you're just like, I'm tired of this.
So there's obviously like how it deals with recessions. It
Okay.
bails out big businesses taking from our tax money. Then there's laws. There's big laws that I feel like should be either givens or something that the big government shouldn't be dealing with, given like different states have like completely different situations that are going on within them.
Okay, so here's what I would say. So like an example of government interference domestically would be like Medicare for all. Like, that's a hypothetical example. Or, you know, even something as simple as Obamacare that does exist but isn't like all encompassing.
Yeah.
Another thing could be like the FBI, the CIA. Like, these are all different. Like, of course, that's a little bit more broad. But just federal programs, be it even just firefighters, police, like, where is your line for libertarianism? Like, where do you say, okay, this is what we need for a functioning society, and this is what we don't need. We're doing too much.
I think the line should be drawn at roads and schools. Like, firefighters, police, they're needed. Schools are needed. Not necessarily like, let's say, Medicare. I think that it goes way too far. And like it was clear from the intentions from the start, like they wanted to like add additional taxes to people who didn't get Medicare. And that just doesn't seem right to me.
Hi. Thank you. Her name's Ohana.
Ohana?
Ohana from Lilo,
Lilo and Stitch?
Yeah.
So it's friend?
Yeah. No, family.
Family?
No.
Friend?
Oh my
I'm pretty
God,
sure
what
it's
is it? No,
Ohana means
family-
friend, right?
No, Ohana means family, and family means no
Fri-
one gets left behind.
Bro, I'm misremembering. You don't even. Yeah, it's been so many years, bro. Like, I got that Gen Z memory. I'm fried up.
But her name's been shortened, so we just kind of call her Hana.
Okay.
So is it bad that if she's in your shot?
Okay. No, it's all good. Okay. So obviously the crux of the question is who you're voting for 2024.
Yeah.
What's on your mind?
So for me personally, I think either candidate is really bad.
You're one of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
It sucks having to vote for either of them. I think if you've heard of it, the guy who named him legally changed his name to literally anyone else.
In order to put his name on the ballot?
Yes.
Literally anyone else.
His name is literally anyone else because it's supposed to it's a statement saying that these are our choices.
It's just garbage.
In my opinion, yes, garbage choices. I mean, you're allowed to vote for whoever you want to vote for, but in my opinion, both Trump and Biden have not done it. I mean, to other people, yes, they have helped, people in their
Okay.
own beliefs, but to me, they've done nothing in my field
In
of
your
what I
field.
want to do career-wise that have helped anything, which is education.
Education. Okay. So obviously, like, a lot of Republicans have considered cutting education as a means of like trying to cut spending because they feel like we're spending too much money and we're in too much debt. Of course, both Trump and Biden are like these, dinosaurs who probably are better off in retirement, hanging out with their grandkids and family.
Such a
Right?
I work in a place where a lot of older people come in. I work at Home Depot. And if that's anything, I know what it's like to have people who are working there because places fired these older people due to their age. And it's different when it's like, if you put your hand out like this, she'll like to sniff and like kind of caress the top of the head. And so I know what it's like to see people have their lives ruined because of their age,
Right.
but it's when like people like this are running the country and are rooted in such old beliefs from, how old are they? Like the 40s?
I know Biden's.
Well, I know. I mean,
yeah,
when
they're
they're
both
born,
40s
like
babies.
in the born 40s.
Yeah, they're both 40s babies. Yeah.
And I have 40s grandparents. I have my biological side. They are Italian and Polish, and then on my stepfamily side, they're Jamaican.
So some of them must have like showed up, like they must have like a first generation.
Yeah, my stepdad, he's first generation Jamaican.
Okay.
And so seeing their beliefs be so widely different, and it's like, I love you, my darling grandparents, but you should not be allowed in the government. Like, please stay home.
But
Like,
realistically, though, we can't really block them because they're probably not going to accept that. And of course, the younger generation probably see themselves like, hey, we saw you guys run the country at like 8 billion years old. Why
Yeah.
can't we,
Yeah.
when we're coughing up dust and, grinding away, why can't we run the country?
Yeah.
So the question becomes like, between which party is like your bullet biter? Like, which one is the one like, all right, you know what? Like, I really don't want you running anything, but because the other side has so many beliefs I don't agree with, I'm picking this one.
I feel like it would be Biden because
Joe
I do
Biden.
consider myself a conservative Democrat. Like certain things, it really just depends on what topic. If you're talking about various topics on human rights or abortion rights,
Okay.
you might think I'm Democratic. But if you talk about gun ownership and sometimes border issues, then I can be more conservative with those issues. So.
Okay, so in terms of like, because I know for me, I'm kind of the same way. I'm really, really pro-gun. I'm a Democrat, but I'm very pro-gun. I also care about a secure border. Would you say that those issues are more important to you than, say, like abortion or whatever the case might be, like what weighs heavier on your mind when you're going to the ballot box?
More so Democratic issues, because people talk about how Democrats is going to come in and take the guns. That shit's not happening.
You don't think so?
I don't think it's happening. Because I do feel like there should be more common sense gun laws, because I know people personally who should not have even a little cap gun.
Right,
Somehow
right.
they pass the background check. So I do feel like, even though I view more conservative with certain issues, there is still a Democratic touch to the conservative issues that I have, like with the border issue. My more so beef with the border issue is y'all make it virtually impossible for immigrants to come here unless they're either on asylum or they just have a buku amount of money to where they can afford the lawyers and that long process. Because people don't realize the process to legally immigrate to America is
very
long and expensive. And if I'm coming from a third world country who I have to worry about even the police being corrupt and I don't have running water and utilities, then at a certain point, out of desperation, I might illegally come here. It may not be the right thing, but sometimes it's not about what's right. Sometimes it's about what's going to keep me alive.
Right. Okay. So you're pro-gun. Is there anything what could somebody possibly say on the Democratic side that's really, really pro-gun control? What could they say to change your mind? Because I'm very pro-gun. What would it be?
I don't think there's anything that's going to change my mind about being pro-gun.
You can't see yourself budging on that?
I can't see myself budging, because if you think about it, this is my favorite example to use. The United States is really one of the only few countries that haven't been invaded yet by a foreign country, except before we even were a country. And that's because who in their right mind would try to invade a country where literally there's more guns than citizens in the country.
Right.
I promise you, if somebody tried to invade from the South, they're not going to make it past
Right.
the South, the southern states.
Yeah, exactly.
So, there's really nothing that can change my mind about being pro-gun, because at the end of the day, there are weapons that are used in a lot of crime, but we're well past the point to where we can take guns away and it'll solve issues, because the law-abiding citizens might comply with it, but criminals not going to change their heart. Be like, oh my God, let me follow the law and turn in my guns. Like that's not about to happen, and I don't think it's fair for law-abiding citizens to be defenseless. Because like I said, criminals not going to give up their weapons, so why should I give up my weapon as a law-abiding citizen who's just basically trying to protect myself and go home to my family or my future family?
So libertarianism, you were kind of talking about how the, federal government is ineffective in handling a lot of social needs, and one of those things was Medicare. And we were just talking about how one of the things that we could do is like the federal government could cover maybe equipment costs for private companies, rather than telling them, hey, like price your services at this level. How about we make it cheaper for you to provide those services? Therefore, it can be cheaper for those who want to receive those services. Is that a really good representation of what you're saying?
Yeah, I'd say so. I just feel like if the government demands that a insurance company set a price, then you're going to get like a stagnant rate. Like they're going to do bare minimum for everyone. But if you give them the incentive to like make their insurance cheaper through having like all this new like saved money, then it would make more sense for them to instead lower their rates and become more competitive with each other, instead of like hiding behind high rates because everyone wants a lot of money from these rates.
Okay. So some people might say that just off the strength of, private healthcare being unbelievably expensive, that they can't necessarily be trusted to, execute this in a way that benefits the people. Is there like a situation you can point to, or any sort of like example you can point to that could convince someone, hey, look, the federal government taking over completely is a bad idea, but it can cut in certain angles, in certain ways to make it better? Do you have any examples, or do you just feel like in theory, not demonstrably, but just in theory, it more than likely is better for us to try to cover certain costs and make it a little bit easier for these private companies?
Okay, so one I could think of is Denmark. So I believe it's either Denmark or one of the other Scandinavian countries. Their big idea was that their government held insurance was great. It was doing its job, but there was an issue of the fact that the government, like the reason why the private ones were so bad is because there was such a great upcharge on medical material at the time. And the companies weren't willing to budge at all. So instead of like demanding them to, they gave some incentives to some tax incentives to the raw material company and the insurance and the private, like the small amount of private insurance companies that were still left there. And all of a sudden, both the Medicare and the private insurance were way cheaper. You paid way less. Like they pay like $20 after a hospital visit in Europe.
So hypothetically, at the end of it all, someone would be able to pick based on like, okay, like maybe I like the service provided by the private company better,
Yeah.
or maybe I like the price of the public, like the Medicare better, but like the prices were low enough to where someone could comfortably pick either one. Is that basically what you're saying?
I have no like objections with like a Medicaid or Obamacare. I mean, same thing, but
Yeah. So it seems like your line in the sand is kind of at like Medicare. Is there anything else that the government kind of has their hand in where you're like, could you like butt out?
it's definitely bailouts. Like when it comes to the economy, the United States is afraid of recessions, and
Right.
we see that when they do inflation, when they keep on printing money, they're afraid of the price of the dollar, like going up rather than down. Because when money is cheaper, you can pay more loans. It's easier. But in a recession, a lot of the time money becomes more scarce and the value goes up. And that's what they're afraid of, because then debts and loans become so much more expensive.
But so you're kind of like looking for an economic purge, but like the bottom line, average citizen is probably dreading the idea of a recession, probably dreading the idea of a government shutdown. Like, how do you convince the general public that, hey, this recession is something is a bullet we need to bite? How do you even, that sounds like a crazy take.
Okay, so in my opinion, recession is completely natural and an important part of an economy. If you don't have the down, then the heights, we've seen it, like, let's say after the 2008 recession, the heights weren't like crazy high. And then we go straight back down. When we try to cut down the lows, all we're doing is also cutting down the highs. You need to ride the wave back up in order to have a healthy economy.
Okay. I wish I knew more about this topic in order to properly engage, but one could say like, hey, like the general public could say like, fuck that idea. Like, fuck the idea of like a recession, like fuck the idea of a healthy economy being dependent upon highs and lows. Like, I want a stable, consistent economy for the rest of my life. I don't want to go back and forth. I don't want any chaos. I don't want any of that. What would a politician that was libertarian and that was for it, what would they have to say?
Well, the way that the government does that, by keeping it like stable, low, high, low, high, low, is that they print money. Everything becomes more expensive for the common person as companies try to match their good prices to that. And if they don't, then they'll like shrink down stuff.
Okay.
And it's just a worse deal for the average person for the government to inflate the currency.
Okay. So you seem like you seem like you have less of an issue specifically with any like particular administration. It seems like you kind of have like a fuck what we've got going on. I have a new system or a new idea of how this should work. Is that like an accurate description? Like you kind of like a system purge or like a revolutionary way of doing things?
I guess so.
Okay. So like both Trump and Biden, generally speaking, they're just not doing it for you in terms of like your total political belief system.
They aren't. I generally say I'd follow down a political compass, right?
Yeah.
So whenever I take them, I always end up at the way bottom, right in the center.
Okay.
I don't think that they really follow my beliefs at all. Like, I would say both are generally more libertarian. The only thing I could say, like, is that since Biden is more moderate, you're generally going to get more compromises. And they generally like tend to fall down more libertarian when they get closer to the center.
Okay. So you feel like that's a little bit more, you're more likely to find decisions made that align more with your beliefs because they're more willing to compromise on that end of things.
Yeah.
Okay. So could you see yourself, if it came to it, like what would have to happen for you to say, okay, I cannot vote for one or the other. Like I need to make sure this guy wins over that. Is there any sort of like apocalyptic like scenario where you're like, man, like I need to make sure this guy does not win?
I think there is a limit with my politicians, and when it comes down to it, we see like government shutdowns during the Trump administration over like I'm not moving the goalpost closer. I'm keeping it right here. We're not getting anything done until this happens.
Right.
And I just don't think that a non-compromised politician is really good in this scenario right now.
Right.
Unless we literally get a full one-side Senate, we're not going to get any meaningful reform done without a centrist in charge.
Mm-hmm. And you feel like Joe Biden's probably a little bit more in line with a
he's
hypothetical.
closer. Yeah.
Yeah, like he's just like, he's somewhere near there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so that brings us back to what you said at the beginning, right? Like these people are too old, which to some extent I would agree. Like some of these people are literally like walking on dust bones. Like, you know, it's been a while since they've, you know, who's replacing them? Because it's like on the Republican side, you have like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a lunatic. You have Matt Gaetz, who's a lunatic. You have a lot of younger people who are more like Gen X, like maybe like our parents' age, who are crazy. And then on the Democrat side, you have like AOC, Ilhan Omar, people like that who are also really young and radical. My argument is I don't really feel comfortable with the younger generation, the Gen X generation coming in and replacing like boomers like Biden. Replacing Trump, yes, please. But boomers like Biden, I kind of prefer those old, like these old guys.
No,
so what would you say to that?
And I would agree. I think that my generation, Gen Z, and the millennial, which is, millennial is before us, the millennial and Gen Z generation need to start voting for people who don't follow under a political party, but following and voting for people who sit with their personal ideals, not just because they're red or blue, but because of who they are as a person and who they are and what they stand for.
Is there anybody in the younger generation that you know of in terms of like politicians that you would say that person could get my vote? Or is it just empty, it's just vacant?
It's probably not. Not that I know of, and I am willing to admit that I haven't researched yet or seen about, because honestly, November is how many months away? Like I'm just...
Yeah, November's a while away.
And I know it's not that far, but it's just... I got exams.
Yeah, you got stuff to do.
Calculus.
You got things to get done. Not trying to decide the fate of the country.
That is something that is on my part, and I'm willing to admit that I am falling behind of, because, and I believe that everyone in my generation falls short of, is not taking the time to research the people that are there who are trying to genuinely help these people.
Okay, that's interesting.
So it's partially my generation and the millennial generation not taking the time to research and to just, it's hard to find people who are not there for the, like, I one time looked it up and I think they make $160,000 for congressmen.
Yeah, you can make a lot of, and then of course you have insider trading and you have a lot of other stuff that goes on.
What's it called? Lobbyists. So
private donors and stuff like that.
And then, it doesn't go to the person, but...
their foundation or something like that, and
how
somehow
many people have lied under oath?
Magically somehow ends up in their checking account or something like that. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of shady stuff going on in Congress and stuff like that, and obviously people are, working there for a gazillion years and never necessarily being held accountable. So obviously there's probably not going to be like a magical politician that pops up.
Yeah.
So what would your recommendation for our generation be to kind of pull the reins back into our control and say, hey, look, we're tired of geezers and all of these old bags running the show. We don't feel represented. What should we do about that?
Well, the problem, in my opinion, is that these people, the Gen Z, is not being educated enough and having the resources or knowledge of the resources they need to know about this stuff. And since most of people's political agenda comes from social media sites like Twitter and Instagram, it's hard to even really, like, I can't remember. It was when it was Walker and what's his face?
Warnock.
Yeah, Walker and Warnock. When it was Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock, when it was them, all I could see on their info page is I could see them, and that was it. They had their whole thing, but then on the rest of the ballot, the only thing I could find was Wikipedia pages. And then it was Facebook stuff of them, and it's just I want to actually find what you're
know who these people are, what they're about.
And that's hard to find without and there's so many resources, but it's hard to know where to look,
where to go,
especially. So I think a part of it is education, because I think I can't remember the website, but my political science teacher, I think Dr. Lee, he showed us this website on the actual demographic of who votes, and the majority of who votes and are the people who want the system to stay and continue.
Yeah, older people.
So it's just they don't want to vote. They don't want to vote. I don't think that they feel like they have a chance to vote because you're just so party centric.
Studies do show that older people are more active voting-wise, and Gen Z is starting to kind of be a little bit less active, but they do say that young women are actually, more active, so that could be where you come in and, get active and vote, but, so generally speaking, I would agree. Too many old people, probably not enough representation of what the country generally wants, and, of course, things are definitely getting a lot more insane.
The key takeaways of just... I think that we should build a strong education system to help these people. And I mean, there's so many people who they do know that, they may be like me, who are privileged to be in a fortunate area and to have a good education. But there are people whose families are first generation and they don't speak English well. And these are people who need the humanitarian votes, and but that's where I believe so strongly in our education and our schools, or just schooling in general, any kind of form of culture being taught throughout one another. I think that's the key goal, and the people who are voting and aren't willing to bridge out and look at other people's culture and understand them.
Okay, so education would be your solution in your mind, just more awareness.
Yeah, but definitely more awareness, but it's hard to get awareness, like I said, when it's when it's so party centric.
Okay, yeah, I agree on that. I agree on that for sure.
I mean, if I remember, Biden said, and I don't quote me on this, but he said, if black people don't vote for me, you're racist.
Be back in chains, or you're not black, or you'll be back in chains, or whatever. that part. That happened,
I did not know it was that. No, I did not.
Yeah. He was like, "You'll be back in chains" or something like that.
Oh God! I didn't even know it was that bad.
There have been a few mess ups, to put it lightly.
Yeah, and then you have Donald Trump, who's just—he's
been wilding from day one.
Yeah, grab her by the. Yeah, and it's
we all have our hang-ups.
Yeah, and it's hey guys, why don't we stop voting for people who are known to be bad people? All right, let's stop. Let's take a break. And people forget, you can write people's names in. You don't have to vote.
You don't have to vote for Joe
what's
Biden.
on there.
You don't have to.
People forget that. They're like, oh well. There goes my choices. Your vote counts, and one vote less for the person that you want is a vote. It's one less vote for the person you don't want, even if you don't vote Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Just vote for somebody who ideals with you, humanitarian wise.
Okay, so your focus is like education and humanitarian care for like the government, and of course education for the youth to become more aware on how to vote and how to engage politically.
Yeah.
Engage politically in an educated way.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they know what they're doing when they show up here, rather than just like knowing they want to be here. They know how to properly navigate and participate in an informed way.
Yeah.
Which I would agree isn't really done in schools, right? Like a lot of kids don't even know like
How to do
how
their
laws are passed, how
taxes.
they do taxes, or how laws are passed, or you know about. I mean, they kind of go over it, but like it's not drilled in enough to where people understand. Like, hey, like the president's not God, like he's not Jesus Christ himself.
That's another thing. The president doesn't do like anything. He is a figurehead for America.
Well, there are executive orders.
Yeah.
But like generally speaking, the president's not just swinging. Okay, I don't want to say that word. The president's not just like running the show like he's like the emperor of the United States, right? He can't just make shit appear.
Yeah.
There's a system put in place,
For
and a
sure.
lot of people don't know that. Like people would be like, Obama didn't do shit. He tried, but it's just like he's not
Can
God.
only do so much.
Right. If Congress says no, he's not Jesus. He can't
Yeah.
just part the congressional sea and he just can't do that. So I would agree. Like education is actually like a really good point. Like people don't know what's going on, and it leads to kind of like
And then-
situations where people don't,
Yeah, and then the news just spits out words that make no sense and nobody knows how to understand it. Like we were at a restaurant the other day and they had the news on and it was just like a jumble of words that were just like buzzer words and I was like, what is this actually saying?
insurrectionist, congressional, archipelago, international.
Going into education, I can't necessarily like tell people what they should believe, but I want to inform people on, we are just like, and it's so cheesy, but at the end of the day, we are just human. Like we are just people, and you have to remember that. As much as it's terrifying to think about the economy crashing and prices going up and I can't drive and all of this, like you just have to remember like we are all just people at the end of the day, and if you're not there for the people, whether you vote for one or the other, then that's a loss on the vote. Like if you truly believe Trump or Biden is for the people, then by all means vote for them.
But you feel as though there's a better way to be for all the people,
Yes.
other than Trump or Biden.
Yes.